What is up, crew? It's your boy Kaycem, and on today's stream we're going to be talking about the back anatomy as I go over the fundamentals of the basic shapes. We'll also go over the anatomy, and then we'll talk a bit about the differences between maybe male, female, body fat distribution, and all of that good stuff. Now, if it's your first time here, welcome into the Kaycem crew. My name is Kaycem. I am a Filipino art streamer here on Twitch, and I teach everything from anatomy, gesture, perspective to all things related to character design, and I also work full-time in the animation industry for the studio that made Castlevania. So hopefully you guys enjoy today's video. Make sure to like, subscribe on YouTube, follow me on Twitch if it's your first time here. And with that being said, let's jump right in. All right. So today's stream, again, we're going to be going over the back, and I think there's going to be a lot of different things that we're going to cover today, but I do want to start off by just going over the basic shapes. I feel like the basic shapes are going to be the core concepts that we're going to be looking at here and working from. Now, this is going to be helpful for those of you who are beginners, and then as we kind of progress, I'll talk about some of the more advanced topics when it comes to drawing the back end of the human body in general. So even if you are a beginner, don't worry, this video is still for you. And even if you are a professional, this video is still for you. All right. So let's go ahead and jump right into the first exercise today. All right. Let us go in and talk about the basic shapes first. Basics and the structure here for the torso. All right. So one of the first things I want to talk about is just simplifying the torso and its proportions. Now, what I like to do is I like to kind of lay out here the first kind of just a box structure. And for this one, for the back anatomy, it's going to be a little bit trickier than maybe the front side. But what I like to do is I like to kind of find that acromion process. Okay. This little bumpy area right here. And we're going to just use that to kind of create a box here. And we're going to try to make it as kind of square-like as we can. Now, keep in mind here that this person's back is going to be rotated, tilted backwards, right? So let's keep that in mind. So there's going to be a little bit of perspective going on, but overall, I think the basic shape should work. Now, we're going to go ahead and let me kind of make it a little bit bigger here. And then we'll lay out the bottom side there. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and flip this one here, duplicate that. And then flip that down. And basically what we have here is the rough structure of the pelvis, right? Now, I know these just look like squares and stuff, but one of the things you have to consider is if you actually take this, and let me move it over here, all right? You might be like, what is this? So the reason why we do this is because, one, this is technically a box here, and this box is a really good representation of just kind of the overall volume of the torso. And then also we can kind of cut this half right here. And that way we can kind of draw out the portion here of the pelvis. Now, we don't really see the bottom portion of his pelvis today, which is completely fine. We're going to be ignoring a lot of that for today, so don't worry too much about that. But you could just imagine now we have here some volume. And the reason why I show you guys this technique is because it's an easy way to understand the proportion of the torso. Basically here, what I'm trying to show you guys is that the upper half here of the torso is going to be all the way the same distance roughly from that 10th rib cage to the pelvic bone at the bottom there. So you can kind of use this as a general guideline, and then later as you want to stylize your characters, change the proportions and all that stuff, it'll be a lot easier to do, right? So like 1/2, 1/2. All right, but we've basically established the rough structure here of our torso. Nice and easy. But going back here to the torso thing, let me go ahead and kind of slap on the center line here. Nice and easy. All right, so that center line is going to be a couple things. One, it's going to show the symmetry of the body, but it's also going to show the spine. Going back here now, guys, let's go ahead and talk a little bit now. So we're going to move away from the basic structure. So this is kind of like level 1 beginner structures. I would highly recommend you guys, especially if you're still a beginner, practice breaking down the shapes like this. And then if you want to get a little bit more flexible, you can change the shape, obviously, to be a little bit more, a little bit more rounded, stuff like that. Right. If you want to kind of do more of an organic feel for your characters or whatever, you can make it rounder as well. It's not a big deal. I think really, again, as long as you're understanding that there's volume there, that's what's most important. Right. I think that's really the key thing here, because at the end of the day, what I want to show you guys is the volume and the structure. I personally like to use boxes for these kind of demos because I think boxes are very clear when it comes to showing the volume of something. Whereas maybe like a blobby organic shape, it's a little bit harder to see. You know, you get what I'm saying? Okay, let's go ahead now. I've established kind of that rough anatomy for the structure that we're using for this guy. Again, I'm not trying to copy this reference exactly. So if you're like, hey, Kaycem, this is looking a little bit off from what we're seeing in the reference, don't worry too much. Okay, the reference is mostly there as a general guideline, but I'll be kind of applying the muscles and stuff on top by itself. Now, going in here, let's go ahead now and talk about actually breaking down the structure that we're seeing here. We're going to go lay out that rib first. And, you know, we've talked about the rib a couple times on my streams, but basically that rib cage, you can think of the rib cage as kind of this egg-shaped structure that fits into this volume that we've drawn in. Now, from the backside here, keep in mind that we're going to be seeing, I'll do it kind of like this, but imagine if the spine, or not the spine, imagine if that rib cage was at side view, we would actually be seeing kind of this structure right here where this maybe right here is that front side here. Okay. Keep in mind here that the spine is going to be curving this way. This is going to be, I believe, the thoracic portion of the spine, and that this portion right here is actually going to be a little bit lower. So this is where that clavicle and all of that stuff are. Right. So from the backside here, this is going to kind of curve going this way. Right. It's going to be a very subtle thing, not a big deal. But as the spine also goes down here to the lower portion, it'll actually curve the opposite direction going this way. And this is going to be the lumbar portion there of the spine. That's going to be roughly about this section right here as it hits that sacrum. And again, don't worry too much about all these terms I'm throwing at you guys. Just giving you a rough idea of the curvature here. Right. So just to kind of help give you guys a visual of the rib cage. Now let's go back on here, and I want to start laying out some of the skeletal anatomy first, because I want to be able to just show you guys where these muscles are actually going to be placed, as opposed to just drawing all the muscles for you guys. Because again, I'm not here to teach you guys about how to draw muscle diagrams or whatever. I'm here to give you guys the ideas and tools necessary so that you can draw your characters in however different body types you want to, different angles, different perspectives, because I think that is what's more valuable to character designers, right? So let's go ahead and talk a little bit about probably one of the most important bones on the back here, and that's actually going to be the scapula. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about the scapula here, and I'll show you guys where to find the scapula too. Let's go ahead here and let's go talk about how to find the scapula if you're looking at a reference. Now, the scapula is kind of interesting because the scapula basically is kind of this triangular shape like this, right? You can think of it as a shoulder blade, by the way. That's the more general term for it. But one of the things that's interesting about the scapula is there's going to be a protrusion of the scapula, and I'll draw it out for you guys really quick so you guys can kind of see what it looks like. So what's really cool about the scapula is basically the scapula kind of has like this interesting protrusion that goes out right here. All right, so you can imagine kind of goes this way. And this protrusion is going to be what is known as that acromion process. Okay, that's kind of what meets on the backside there, or sorry, on the front side there of the collarbone, right? So you can imagine this is the clavicle shape. It's going to be, sorry, not a clavicle, the shoulder blade shape there. And what's going to be interesting is that you can actually find the shoulder blade on the reference by looking at the indentations of where the muscles are going to be. Now, one of the first ones we're going to see right here is this dot right here, this kind of groove on the shoulder there. And that's going to be where those muscles intersect at the acromion process. The second groove that we're going to be looking for is actually none other than this one right here, because this is actually where we're going to be finding where those trap muscles also lock in with the, with that scapula. And then last but not least, we're going to kind of bring this one down like so. And then this right here, because remember, we have to keep in mind that his arms are kind of moving forward there. So that scapula is really going to get kind of pushed forward as well, right? So this is kind of a rough general placement there of the scapula, of that shoulder blade there. And you can kind of do the same thing here on the other side as well. So we'll kind of do that here. We're going to find these two dimples, right? And these two dimples are going to be kind of that angle there of the scapula. And then we're going to have that lower portion going in this way. All right, so hopefully that made some sense in terms of where to find the scapula. Now, other things to keep in mind is roughly the scapula or the shoulder blade. I'll just call it scapula for now, for those of you who are confused. Basically, this should roughly be the size of the head, give or take, from like that top to bottom portion. Now, obviously, this is going to be kind of angled here a little bit, but it's roughly going to be about the size of the head there. So if you're kind of wondering like, hey, how long or how far down should I be making the scapula? Try to make it roughly about the length of the head. And I think that's going to be a rough, good placement to start. Okay. So with that being said, let's go in here now and let us go in now and start laying this out on our own illustration over here on this side. All right, but let's go up next and draw out the anatomy. All right. For when it comes to drawing out the anatomy here of the trapezius muscles, the trap muscles are basically responsible for kind of raising the shoulder blades and kind of helping move things around in the backside there. So it's a very important muscle, probably one of the biggest muscles on the backside to keep track of, aside from maybe the lat muscles. But what's really cool about this muscle group is that it actually connects, and I'll draw a little bit more here. But first, it connects to the back of the skull right here. All right, so keep that in mind. Back of the skull, we're going to kind of put a little bit of a line there, and then it goes all the way down, and then the tendons of this muscle actually kind of wrap around the spine and connect to about, maybe I would say it's a little bit about halfway here, but all the volume you're going to see is like right here. So you can kind of see that right here. So the tendons connect all the way down here, but most of the muscle mass and volume are going to be around these areas right here and this here. All right, so we'll talk about that there. Now, an easy way to visualize this muscle group is to actually think of this muscle group as kind of like an arrow, almost like a diagonal shape that goes down here on the back. So it's kind of a cool, interesting shape. But we'll break it down into 3 parts. All right, so you're going to have this first part here, which again connects to the back of the neck, and that's going to flow down and gesture outwards like this. All right, here you can actually see on this guy the tendon here, the tendinous portion of the traps are actually going to go wrap around. They're going to wrap around this little nub section right here, and that's going to be the 7th vertebrae of the spine, right? But going back here, the way that I like to break up the actual structure of the back anatomy here of the traps is I'm actually going to go find these volumes. And so there's going to be 3 major portions here to keep in mind. Okay, there's this upper portion here that connects to the neck, and then there's going to be this lower portion right here, and this lower portion also connects to the spine, as you guys can see, but it also connects here to the upper portion of the scapula here, which I think is really cool, right? And so it's going to connect to the upper ridge there of the scapula, and then from that upper ridge of the scapula, you can kind of imagine it's going to flow down here. It's going to create this dimple shape. So this guy right here actually has some interesting kind of volume like that. That's kind of bulging the muscles a little bit. So I'll kind of draw that out here. All right. And don't worry, I'll color code all these things later. So don't worry too much if you're like, yo, what am I looking at? What's what? Okay, I'll color code it in a bit. But basically what's going to happen is it's going to create this dimple shape. Let me lower the opacity here. It's going to create this dimple shape right here, and that's because this portion right here is where the trap muscles are going to be connecting the tendon there to the scapula bone. But what's interesting also, there's a lower portion right here of the trap muscle as well that also connects to the back there, or to the scapula there. But again, because it's so much thinner than the other portions, what you're mostly going to be seeing, especially with this guy right here, is this volume that's kind of happening right here. You can kind of see it on this guy, right? And so what's going to happen there is this intersection right here of between, there's a pocket right here. You can kind of see it on this guy. That's the intersection between the scapula bone, the lat muscles, and then the trap muscles, and then the lat muscles down here, which we'll get to in just a bit. So it's kind of interesting. Once you kind of understand how the anatomy works, you can start to decipher what the heck all these bumps and landmarks are when it comes to drawing the body, right? When it comes to drawing the torso and the anatomy and all that stuff, it starts to make a little bit more sense. It doesn't mean that it'll be you'll be able to draw it right away. I think that'll still take some practice, right? But I think understanding is the first step in being able to draw all of these components comfortably, and eventually doing it from however you want to draw it out. So let me go ahead and actually color. I'll go color this one out for you guys so you guys can kind of see what I'm referring to here. So let's do a nice vibrant blue color. So this right here, this section all the way right here, connecting to that acromion process, wrapping around this way, all of that is basically going to be the trap muscles there. But again, some of these portions like right here are going to be a little bit lighter because these are just going to be tendinous portions that connect here to the scapula. So this portion right here, there's going to be this portion right here that connects to the spine, right? So all of these are going to be pockets. You can kind of see that in this reference right here. Actually, these are all just pockets in the human body because these are more tendon than they are muscle. But all right, let's go ahead now and let's talk a little bit about the shoulder blade muscles. And these are going to be really fun, interesting muscles. Now, the first muscle I'm going to talk about, I'm just going to get it out the way here, is there's a muscle on the top of the scapula right here, and this is called the supraspinatus. You don't have to worry, you don't have to know about it because it's going to be hidden anyways, so don't worry about that. I'm just telling you guys. I'm just telling you guys right now, that's where it is, okay? But the one that is actually really important is going to be this muscle right here called the infraspinatus, and also it's going to be the teres minor. Now, this muscle is actually this giant bulge right here. That's going to be the combination there of the infraspinatus and the teres minor, all right? And this muscle is going to be connecting to the side there of the scapula, and then it's going to be connecting and right here into that humerus bone on this side. So it's a huge muscle chunk right there. You'll see it pretty commonly in muscular people, and especially if you're doing a pose like this guy right here. He's doing a very clear pose. Now, notice how I'm leaving a little bit of room there, all right? I'm leaving a little bit of room because this portion right here is going to be the other structure there of the muscle group, and this is going to be called the teres major. Now, this muscle, this is going to be this one right here. This muscle, honestly, is one of my favorite muscles in the back muscle because I think it's such an interesting muscle right here. And I'll talk about that in a second. Okay, but now let's kind of move our way down here. And let's talk a little bit about another important muscle group, which you'll actually see right here. And this is going to be called the lat muscles. All right. I think maybe some of you guys know about this muscle already, but basically the lat muscles are really cool because they basically connect to kind of like halfway of the spine right here. And they're going to basically wrap around this form. You can kind of see it right here. It'll wrap around that shoulder, the shoulder muscles that we just talked about right here, tuck underneath that teres major, and it'll create this kind of wingspan shape right here, all the way down to the pelvis. But anyways, the thing that I wanted to talk about was actually this structure right here that I think is really important, which is going to be talking about how the teres major actually wraps around the lat muscles there. So I think the best way to explain it is just to show you guys this diagram right here. So what's really cool, I know this sounds kind of weird, but is that this blue muscle right here, the teres major, it basically wraps around and into the arm right here and inserts into the front side of the arm. So even though this is a back muscle, right? So keep this in mind, even though we have back muscles, that doesn't mean that back muscles are exclusive to the back of the body. Some of these muscles are going to wrap around forward and actually connect to the front side of the body as well. And so those are going to be the two muscles here, the lat muscle, which we just drew, and that blue muscle of the teres major that connects to the shoulder, right? So the teres major, again, wraps around, connects to the front side there, it twists. It's kind of weird if you think about it. These muscles actually twist. So the lat muscle twists and moves forward there and also connects into the upper portion of the arm. So it's kind of this interesting shape that's going on there. But when you go back and actually draw the this section of the muscle, you'll see here that once the lat muscles get towards the arm right here, it actually gets pretty thin. And so what ends up happening is instead, most of the muscle that you're seeing, this is not actually the lat muscle. This is actually that teres major muscle, which we just talked about. That's really creating all of that volume there. Even though the lat muscle, this one right here, which I'll just draw really quick in blue, that's going to wrap around here and insert onto the front side of this muscle. I know that sounds weird. I know that sounds like a lot of info, and you might be like, huh? What did I just hear? So I understand it's a little complicated there. But again, I think these things are valuable because the more you know about what's going on, I think the easier it becomes to be able to visualize all the weird, crazy bumps that are going on in the back muscle. But let's go ahead now. And I think last but not least, I want to wrap up here, at least in terms of the anatomy breakdown and stuff, with the final set of muscles, which is going to be one. You can actually see it right here. There's going to be a muscle that maybe is not as commonly known, and that's going to be called the erector spinae. Okay, erector spinae is an interesting muscle because it basically is deep in the back right here. It creates this kind of wrapped out form like this. And then it also kind of tapers and creates a little bit of this curve. You can kind of see this bump right here on this guy. It creates that groove on the back there, just where the lat muscles and the spine all meet up with that pelvic bone right there. So that's going to be known as the erector spinae. You're not going to see a lot of it, honestly. It's kind of like hard to see in a lot of people. But just know that the reason why it has a curve like this on the back is mostly because of that erector spinae going in here. So I just wanted to highlight it for you guys, just to let you guys know what the heck is going on. But it kind of fans out this way, and then it tapers out here, kind of like a funnel in some ways. Okay, cool. And then last but not least, we're gonna have here the oblique muscles. Okay, now there are some other muscle groups here that we're not gonna talk about yet today. Particularly I'm looking at the glutes. Okay, so there's some glutey muscles right here. All right, but we're not going to focus too much on that today, so I'm going to simplify these out. But there are some muscles there. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap it up here, and just kind of insert in the oblique muscles on the side. Okay, and so there you go. That's going to be your general muscle groups. We have here the gluteus maximus on this side, gluteus medius on this side as well. And that's about it. And now I'm gonna label these out really quickly for you guys, just so that you guys can see them all. But that's gonna be the diagram here of the back muscles. Good job, you guys have done it. Claps in the chat. Claps in the chat. All right. There is a muscle group. I forgot to mention it. I always forget it. Okay, sorry. One more muscle. Sorry. There's a muscle here that is deep in the back here. You're not going to see it often, but when you do see it, you'll know what I'm talking about. There's one more muscle that I forgot to mention, and it's this muscle right here. And this is none other than, yeah, there's a lot of muscles, actually. There's technically a lot of muscles, but I'm just giving you guys the ones that are most visible, that I think are most important. And that muscle right there is actually called the romboid muscle. And that's a muscle that goes diagonally across the back here, kind of like this. It connects to the side there of the scapula, and actually connects all the way to roughly about that 7th vertebrae, like this, and connects across the scapula there. Okay, so that's the final one there I'm going to call out. But you'll see how it's underneath the lat muscle and also underneath the trap muscle there. So I always forget about it because it's honestly, you're not really going to see it all too often, right? But okay, let me go ahead and label these for you guys, so that way you guys can kind of get an idea. And also something to keep in mind, guys, is these muscles are going to be interlocking and interweaving with each other. So just keep that in mind. Even though, like, for example, I drew the lat muscles on top of the teres major there, the volume that you're seeing on that section is mostly going to be the teres major, right? So just keep that in mind. This is why I always tell you guys diagrams kind of suck sometimes, because the diagrams only tell you really about the names and the positions, but they don't tell you anything about the volume, the structure, and then how to draw them and see them from different angles, which I think is what's really more important. Latissimus, how do I spell this? Damn. I need to Google this real quick. Sorry, guys. I need to, or somebody, oh, thank you. There you go. Someone in the chat. Yeah. I was like, there's like too many S's. That seems right. Latissimus dorsi. Yeah, I do apologize. But let me highlight a few landmarks for you guys as well. We were talking about landmarks earlier. So there's going to be another landmark right here. So these are bony landmarks that you can look for in the body. Obviously, the spine is another one here, but you have here that seventh vertebrae is a very key one. And I would say these are going to be majority of the bony landmarks. Okay, but really quick, guys, I'm just slapping on here some general shapes. And again, for those of you who are curious about the way that I structured my basic shapes and stuff, I always start off with primitive shapes. Whether you want to go with a rounded shape or you want to go for more of a boxy shape, it's really up to you. But what's most important is going over the basic proportions. And so we talk about how here the torso is roughly going to be the length of 2 squares right here, from the portion there of the acromion process all the way down here, and then going down this way. Now you might be wondering, but wait a minute, Kaycem, what about all of this stuff right here? Okay, what's all this extra volume that I'm seeing here? All right, first of all, what color were her panties? Yeah, I know what you guys were looking at. Nice try. All right, but the reason what's going on here is actually this is extra volume. First of all, there's the pelvis going on here, right? So the pelvis is tilting downwards, right? Like this. But also right here, you're going to be seeing the volume of the glutes. And so that glutes is going to add extra volume here on the pelvic itself. But in terms of the actual proportions, from roughly the clavicle down to the pelvic bone is roughly going to be about 2 kind of squares length. It's going to be kind of a nice equidistant proportion there. All right. So again, these are more generalizations. When you start stylizing your characters and all that stuff, you can definitely, play around with it and change the proportions. But a good kind of starting point is really going to be understanding those simplified shapes. But right now, I'm just going to simplify the forms. So I'm imagining here, for example, some shoulder sockets, right? Easy shoulder sockets there. There's going to be the combination there of the humerus bone, deltoid, all of that stuff going in. And I'm just going to simplify it because, again, today's stream is not focused on the arms. We'll save that for another day. So I'm just going to simplify this one out. And then let's talk a little bit about finding some of these landmarks that we mentioned earlier, because it might be tricky, right? So one of the first ones to look for is actually going to be the scapula right here, which you can actually kind of see this bump right here is going to be that top portion of the scapula. Then we're going to find this nub right here. That's going to be the acromion process. And there you go. We have here the angle of the scapula. You see that? Nice. Like that's kind of all it is. So find the acromion process, find that nub right here, and then there you go. The rest of it is a triangle shape. It's going to be roughly the length of the head, the skull itself, and that's kind of it. So you do that every time, and then you'll be kind of good to go there. Is there a way to know how long to make the 2 squares for the torso? Well, you just make 2 squares, right? So you make 2 squares, and technically it's kind of deceiving, but basically you make a square, right? So a square is going to be the same on all sides. You take that same square, right? You put it down this way. Maybe we add a little bit of a tilt here for the pelvis, right? And that's it. So 2 squares. Obviously you're gonna make some volume here to make it more protrude back there, right? And then from there, what you're gonna do is you're gonna kind of cut out that halfway mark right there. That's gonna be the pelvic region right there. And this simple structure, basically you can then make this more complex, turn this into a rib cage, right? But it's 2 squares. So like the square will have the same what is it called, length on all sides, because that's like the definition of a square, I guess. So we're gonna go here. We're gonna go find the scapula, right? And then let's kind of continue on this one. But yeah, hopefully that made sense. Digital vibe. The length of the square basically is just however long you want it to be. So I'm going to go in first and just kind of lay out. I'm just laying out the arms because I think even though we're not focusing on arms today, remember that the deltoid muscle still still does connect, right? So it still does reach over here and connect to the back there of that scapula, or the shoulder blade, I should say. So, okay. But let's kind of go in here now and let's lay out all these muscles, and then I'm going to clean it up a little bit to make it look a little bit nicer for this diagram that we have here. Got the obliques going down here. Okay, and then now let's go in and kind of clean this one up a little bit, and I'll talk a bit about some of the anatomy and stuff again that we went over earlier, right? So again, you're not going to see a lot of these things, all this anatomy and stuff that I'm showing you guys, but it's good to know. And I think the most important thing is to probably find the scapula, because if you can do that, I think that's really the biggest thing, right? Finding the scapula. If you can do that one, easy peasy. The rest of the journey, I would say, is actually the rest of the journey here of drawing. It becomes a lot easier once you find that scapula bone, because that scapula really is a major connection for a lot of the muscles on the back there. So if you can lock that one in, I feel like you've basically done 50% of the work of drawing the back anatomy and all of that stuff. A few kind of tips and tricks here. I'm going to add a little bit of overlap here. So even though you can kind of see it right here, actually, even though the neck kind of goes like that and there's a much more softer transition, sometimes it's nice to add some graphic overlap with the forms to kind of showcase the depth and volume of things. And it could be very, very subtle too. So it doesn't have to be a crazy overlap there. But yeah, you'll see that once you start drawing out the figure, I'm actually going to, again, get rid of a lot of the anatomy that we drew out, but I'll highlight a few things just to kind of showcase, like, hey, we know where some of the anatomy is. All right. For example, one of the areas that I want to highlight is going to be this acromion process, a nice landmark to kind of just denote there. This little nub right there, that's kind of the acromion process. We'll wrap that one out here for the shoulder, and then, we'll kind of go down, add a little bit of a soft, subtle transition there. I'm going to kind of just shrink the arm just a tad bit from what we had. And then we'll go in here, add a little pocket there for the insertion. Okay. And then now, as we get into all this complexity here of the back, not all of these things are going to be, denoted. So let's kind of choose here. Let's pick and choose our battles right now. So I'm just going to denote the spine just to kind of show you guys where the spine is. And you know what? I realized we haven't even talked about the spine anatomy yet. We should probably talk about that in a bit. We'll do that. We'll do that after this. But here you can kind of see some interesting things going on. So first I'm going to denote kind of the shoulder blade there, right? So that scapula, or yeah, the scapula there. Maybe I'll add a little bit of a gestural line there. And then I'm going to go down, kind of find that flow here. And you can kind of see there's a bit of skin kind of tugging away at that line there. So we can maybe add a little bit of that just to kind of showcase it a little bit. But again, it's really up to you what you want to showcase. Sometimes less is more. So you don't have to, add in every single detail that you see here. But add what you feel is right and what will help you convey the scene. We're going to go in here and add the little belt around her, or what do you call this, bra strap thing? I don't know much about clothing to be able to tell you exactly what she's wearing, but whatever that is, she's got it on. Okay. Now going back here, let's go add maybe a quick little bump right here, just kind of a nice little line. And then here, I'm going to do a little subtle thing where I'm going to kind of change the silhouette here, add a little bit of volume that goes down this way. And that's going to be, again, that teres major muscle that we talked about, right? And so we're going to kind of denote a little bit of it, right? Not too much, but by subtly changing some of the silhouette there, it can really help, I would think, sell some of the illustration better. Ta-da! There you go. Nice, easy peasy. Let me go clean up a few things. And then I think I'm going to color it out really quick for you guys. Nothing too crazy, just a quick grayscale to showcase the form and the anatomy, not the anatomy, the volume and stuff. But there you go. See? Nice and quick and easy, right? Again, when you draw these things out, you don't have to draw out all the muscle diagrams that we did, right? It's completely not necessary. But I think practicing these things and helping yourself visualize them, especially in forms where you don't see it, I feel like is going to be really helpful. Yeah, so how do I go about drawing the torso and all this stuff and the proportions for the shapes, right? So if you take a look here, again, I basically took the idea of this square box shape that we had over here, all right? And I kind of just rounded it out. That's kind of all I really did here. So I took the box shape here. I'll draw the box out really quick. I'll go like this. So I took this box shape. I'm gonna do it a little bit like this. And again, this box shape really is just about, I'm using a square here for the flat side there at the back. And so a square, a little geometry here, but a square is the same length on all sides, okay? This is literally, this is no longer an art stream. This is a math stream, a geometry stream. But I took that shape there and I basically said, okay, I'm going to take that now and watch this. I'm going to take it, flip it vertically. And there you go. That's all I did. So I did this in my head, obviously, so you guys didn't see me do this, but I took that shape there and I said, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and duplicate that. And what do we have there? The torso. Easy peasy. And if you actually take this, watch this. If you take it there, that's basically here what we have, right? So we have here the lining there of the acromion process. We have here the mid portion of the back there. And then right here, we have there where the end of the pelvis is. But of course, don't forget, there are going to be some glutes and all of that stuff. So, you know, don't forget the glutes and stuff. But it's a rough generalization of the simple shape there. And what I'm taking now from this simple shape is I'm saying, okay, well, let's go ahead and kind of carve out this shape a little bit more. Right? So let's go ahead now and say, you know what? I kind of just want here, this portion of the pelvis. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut this one halfway, right? Add a little bit of a tilt there. Let's get rid of all of this stuff right here. We don't need any of that. And then there you go. Now we have all of this, but then let's go ahead and say, you know what? The volume of the pelvis is gonna be a little bit rounder, right? So a little bit rounder as we kind of go here. Let's kind of fill that one out a bit more. Let's chop out some of these things here. And then from there, this is kind of how I'm getting the shapes that I have here now on that inner side. And I'm kind of naturally adding in some volume there. I'm going to kind of give the shape there of the rib cage, which we've talked about a few times. And then we're going to kind of just curve that out as well. So we're kind of carving it out of these simplified shapes that we've established right here, right? But we're keeping it nice and simple. We're keeping it nice and loose. And again, this is just one way to go about it. There are so many different ways to draw the torso, but I think understanding the visual structure can actually be really helpful in later then adding in some complexity, right? And so a great example of that is kind of this example here where I show you guys, you know, you take this box shape, you kind of take it as a nice simple form. If you can draw this box structure, you can rotate it in different angles, different perspective, and then you can add in all the complexity, all the muscles and forms, and maybe you do it for a more rounder shape instead. You can do it that way as well. But it's really a matter of understanding the volume and then from that volume, adding in the details after. So I kind of skipped all of those steps when I drew this guy out, so just I do apologize for that. But that is kind of what I do when I'm drawing these out here. I'm just kind of taking the rough idea there and just kind of go slapping them in. Now keep in mind here that I am changing the perspective, so I'm not using this reference one-to-one. I'm just using it as a general guideline there. And right now I'm going to go in, I'm going to add all the other forms that I got here, right? So we got the arm. Let's put the arm in there real quick. So, really quick, we're going to talk about here. This is a great anatomy. Look at this. The seventh vertebrae there. I love it. You love to see it. But before then, let's actually talk about, I keep forgetting to talk about the spine, huh? Okay, I'll talk about it right now. So the spine, guys, has vertebrae, okay? And look, this is going to get a little complicated, but basically the spine has, let me think, 19 plus 5, 27. So there are 27 vertebrae. Is that right? 7? Hold on. 7 plus 12 is 19 plus 5, 23. Sorry, 23. There are 23 vertebrae in the spine, okay, with the first 7 there actually being known as the cervical. Okay, so this is the cervical vertebrae, and that's going to be in charge of basically connecting the head to the or having the head there connection and having that connect all the way to that neck portion. All right, so that's going to be all the way to the 7th vertebrae here that you're seeing. It's this nice little bumpy protrusion there on the back. As we kind of make our way down here, the spine is going to curve along here, and this is going to be the curve of that rib cage. All right, now this right here is going to be from that 7th vertebrae all the way down right here to the 19th vertebrae, so vertebrae 1 to 12 here, and that's going to be called the thoracic portion of the spine. Now again, don't worry too much about all the names. If you're like, Kaycem, what the heck, I don't know what you're talking about, that's okay, because again, this is more for those of you who are maybe a little bit more advanced and are looking for some of the terminology and names here. If you're not looking for those things, that's okay. Ignore what I'm saying right now. But just know that there's 3 sections. There's the curved section that goes this way for the head. Then there's going to be the curved section this way for the ribs. And then there's going to be another curved section this way, and that's called the lumbar section. And that is for the from the torso to the pelvis there. Okay. Again, it's the first 7 vertebrae, then 1 to 12 here, and then 1 to 5 here. Okay. But here, let's go find that scapula first. Again, scapula is arguably the most important thing when it comes to drawing the back. If you can find the scapula there, you're pretty much solved 50% of drawing the back. That's like the first thing to look for is that scapula. Where is that scapula bone? Can we find it? If not, then that's maybe what you should be studying. All right, but next let's go in here and let's kind of work on the deltoids, because the deltoids, we're going to ignore that later. Now the deltoid muscle is nice and easy. We're going to just, again, pick out the latter third there of the section of the scapula we just drew, and we're just going to rough it out, find that section, and then we're going to taper out here towards the front side of the arm. So just keep that in mind. I can do your job but better. It's like, can you? Can you really? I don't know about that, Chief. But yeah, right now I'm just drawing out the muscles, by the way. I know we weren't going to talk about it, but I wanted to draw them out because I think this one's a little bit harder to see. And so I think it's a great example to just break down some of the anatomy and stuff that we're seeing right now. Look, I know we're not doing glutes today, but I'm going to simplify it for you guys, okay? Apparently the algorithm, who would have thought the algorithm likes glutes? I'm going to just draw it out. I'm not going to talk about it. Or I'm not going to break down the booty cheeks, but I'm just going to draw it out for you guys. And then just know that someday I'll explain everything. I'll explain what the heck is going on here. So let me go ahead and clean this one up for you guys so you can kind of see. So I did more of like the muscle breakdown there, but I wanted to kind of just do a cleaned up version to show you that, hey, you don't have to, you don't have to draw everything. You don't got to draw all the details and stuff. Oh, look at this. This is so interesting. And so what's going on here, okay, is so you have here the scapula, right? And you have here the trap muscle there. But it's interesting because you can kind of see an indentation right here. And so that kind of pocket there is going to be comprised of, honestly, a couple things that's going on there. So this guy is kind of interesting because he has kind of he has his infraspinatus and stuff here, right? And then you have kind of that portion right here. He kind of has like an indent there because I think he's kind of pressing his back a little bit. And so you're seeing some of that muscle around the area really scrunch up more and create more of that definition. That's a very interesting kind of shape that you're seeing there. But I'm going to ignore it. And I'm just going to say, you know what? Let's just get that scapula right here. And let's kind of bring that down. And let's focus on that instead. And let's get that taper. Let's get the spine here first. I'm gonna add in there a little bit of the taper there for the spine. And again, you can keep this as simple as you want. I'm just gonna add in a few areas where I feel like we're seeing a lot of major forms. So kind of like in the backside there, maybe a little bit of a fold here for the spine, and maybe a little bit of a pinch there for the trap muscles, right? So I'm going to add a little bit of a bump here, just like that. Maybe add a little bit of a subtle curve or gesture for the backside there of the lats. And then overall, I think this is kind of mostly it for the anatomy. Again, you don't have to denote too much. I always say, you know, focus on what's most important and then let everything else kind of speak for itself. Cool. And I think with that, guys, I think we're pretty much good with this one for today, at least this reference right here. Okay, so let me go ahead and just move all these things together. And then with that being said, let me do a quick wrap up for YouTube, so my YouTube viewers and stuff. If you guys are watching from YouTube, by the way, welcome in. My name is Kaycem. I am a Filipino art streamer here on Twitch, and I cover everything from anatomy, gesture, perspective to all things related to character design. And I also currently work full-time in the animation industry for the studio that made Castlevania. Currently, right now, I'm prepping to work as a character designer for shows like Castlevania, Legend of Korra, and Invincible. So if you guys enjoyed today's tutorial and all that stuff, make sure to subscribe, like the video on YouTube, and if you haven't yet followed on Twitch, make sure to do that as well. Now it's just you and me, guys. We're chilling out here on Twitch. This is if you're watching from YouTube, you're not going to get this part,